Welcome to IE News. I'm Leila Masimba. Here are the top stories. South Korean president issues a statement after being arrested as protests in the country continue. Joe Biden looks to relax Cuba sanctions in final days before Donald Trump takes office. Ukraine's energy grid suffers significant damage after Russian airstrike on western Ukraine. South Korean authorities have arrested impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol on insurrection charges related to his martial law declaration in December. This marks the first time an arrest warrant has been issued for a sitting president, with Yoon agreeing to questioning to prevent bloodshed.
South Korean impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol was arrested early this morning after a motorcade was seen leaving his fortified residence on a hillside. For weeks, Yoon had been living under heavy security, surrounded by barbed wires, as tensions escalated surrounding the legal charges against him. In a statement made from his residence, Yoon expressed his outrage over the arrest, calling the situation deplorable and questioning its legality, while agreeing to questioning in order to prevent bloodshed.
When I saw them break into the security area using firefighting equipment today, I decided to respond to the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials' investigation, despite it being an illegal investigation, to prevent unsavory bloodshed. However, that doesn't mean I'm acknowledging the investigation of the CIO.
The arrest stems from charges of insurrection related to Yoon's declaration of martial law on December 3rd, which sparked national controversy. More than 3,000 police officers and anti-corruption officials were deployed to the residence to carry out the arrest. As officers attempted to enter, they faced fierce resistance from Yoon's supporters. Yoon's legal team has condemned the attempt as unlawful, arguing that the move was politically motivated. Despite the frigid temperatures, hundreds of pro-Yoon supporters camped outside his residence overnight, showing solidarity with the former president. The chaotic scene led to clashes between police and demonstrators, while opponents of Yoon also gathered in protest nearby. Authorities had earlier attempted to serve the historic arrest warrant on January 3rd, but were thwarted by standoff with Yoon's security team and military guards. This latest attempt marks a critical moment in the ongoing legal battle and political turmoil surrounding the impeached president.
In Bolivia, former President Evo Morales failed to appear for a court hearing, citing medical reasons. The ex-president is under investigation for aggravated trafficking of persons lodged against him.
Bolivia's former president, Evo Morales, did not appear for a court hearing, citing medical reasons. Morales is being investigated for the crime of aggravated trafficking against a minor, with whom he allegedly fathered a child in 2016 during his administration. The judge confirmed that Morales' defense had presented a medical report, alleging he was suffering from several conditions, including bronchopneumonia, which prevented him from traveling to the city of Tarija, where the hearing was set to take place.
This medical certificate was issued on January 12th. Therefore, after a lengthy debate that has taken place in the hearing, the undersigned judge has considered as valid this element presented to justify his non-attendance at this hearing. The hearing for evaluating and applying precautionary measures for the citizen has been rescheduled for Friday, January 17.
With the hearing being rescheduled for Friday, Morales' defense has been given a 48-hour window to present medical evidence to substantiate the former president's illness. Tarija prosecutor warns that his failure to appear on Friday will result in the issuing of an arrest warrant.
If he does not show up, the same thing will happen as happened with the other defendant, the mother of the victim. We would apply the Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 187, and declare his absentia and issue an arrest warrant, the preventive seizure of all his assets, and any other action we may request during the hearing.
Meanwhile, in Bolivia's capital, La Paz, police and supporters of Morales clashed during an anti-government protest. The thousands of protesters gathered to demand the resignation of incumbent leader Luis Arce. citing economic challenges. Authorities, however, believe the protests are related to the investigation of Morales. About 50 people were arrested during the demonstration.
President Joe Biden plans to ease sanctions on Cuba just days before leaving office, aiming to provide economic relief and push for the release of political prisoners. However, some Cubans remain skeptical, questioning how effective these changes will be.
US officials said President Joe Biden plans to relax sanctions on Cuba just days before Donald Trump takes office. The measures were expected to give Cuba some economic relief in the short term as it battles a crippling economic crisis. But some Cubans in Havana viewed Biden's plans as too little too late.
He promised many things at the beginning, that he would help Cuba in many ways that he really never fulfilled. But this will be his final goodwill.
Well, we have to see what Trump does next. Knowing him, it's possible that they quit this week and Trump comes and everything goes backward. I see it as a somewhat useless action because how many advantages will we have for how long? A couple of weeks? A few days?
The measures Biden plans include a reversal of several hardline restrictions put in place by Trump during his first term. A senior administration official said the measures include plans to lift the US designation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism and to undo a Trump order that restricted financial transactions with some Cubans. Officials said Biden expects the move would lead to the release of political prisoners in Havana. They did not specify the number of prisoners or give a time frame. In a brief letter to Congress, Biden said his steps were necessary to the national interests of the United States and will expedite a transition to democracy in Cuba.
Wildfires continue to ravage Los Angeles County, claiming 25 lives and displacing tens of thousands. As emergency responders fight the flames, authorities have made 50 arrests for crimes such as looting and arson.
The wildfires burning across Los Angeles County have become one of the most destructive in the region's history, with at least 25 confirmed deaths and nearly 30 people still missing. The fires have scorched over 115 square kilometers of land, fueled by strong Santa Ana winds, reaching speeds of up to 80 kilometers per hour. Thousands of homes have been destroyed and 88,000 residents have been ordered to evacuate, with another 84,000 on high alert. The blazes have caused widespread damage, with the Eaton and Palisades fires standing out as the most catastrophic. The Eaton fire has burned over 56 square kilometers, destroying 7,000 structures and claiming 17 lives. The Palisades fire has ravaged 93 square kilometers, destroying 5,000 buildings and causing at least 8 deaths. These two fires now rank as the most destructive in Southern California's history, surpassing the Cedar Fire in 2003. Emergency crews continue to battle the flames, with over 8,000 firefighters working across the region, aided by teams from the US and abroad. While there was some brief relief on Tuesday with lighter winds, conditions remain perilous, and forecasters are warning of the potential for stronger winds that could reignite the fires. Nearly 90,000 households have been left without power as utilities shut off electricity to prevent additional sparks. In addition to the growing humanitarian crises, authorities are facing criminal activities in the affected areas. Police have announced roughly 50 arrests for crimes including looting, flying drones in fire zones, and violating curfews. The cause of the wildfires is still under investigation, but the intense heat and dry conditions have made firefighting efforts particularly challenging.
Russia launched airstrikes targeting energy facilities in western Ukraine, including the Lviv region, causing further power disruptions. In response to that, emergency cuts have been introduced in multiple regions, including Kharkiv and Zaporizhia.
In the latest escalation of fighting, Russia has targeted critical infrastructure in western Ukraine, further crippling the country's energy grid. The airstrikes hit facilities in the Drohobych and Stry districts of the Lviv region, according to local authorities. While no casualties have been reported, energy infrastructure received significant damage. In response, Ukraine's national grid operator, Ukrenergo, implemented emergency power cuts in 6 regions, including Kharkiv, Zaporozhye and Dnipropetrovsk. Ukrainian officials also confirmed that preventive measures are in place to protect the distribution network from further damage. Early in the day, air defenses in Ivano-Frankivsk successfully intercepted more Russian missiles aimed at local energy facilities, although the full extent of the damage remains unclear. Meanwhile, Russia's ground forces are continuing their slow but steady advance in eastern Ukraine. Russian Defense Ministry reported that its troops have captured 2 villages, Terny and Neskuchne, in Donetsk, as part of a broader push in the region. Although Ukraine has reported ongoing resistance, Russia's advances near strategic locations, such as Pokrovsk, threaten to further disrupt Ukrainian energy and logistics operations.
Moscow says it is ready to discuss security guarantees, including to Ukraine, in order to achieve lasting peace in Eurasia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Russia is willing to sit down with Donald Trump when he takes the Oval Office. Dasha Chernyshova has more from Moscow.
Moscow says it will study U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's peace initiatives on Ukraine when he takes office. That's what Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said to foreign and Russian media outlets. Wrapping up Russia's foreign policy performance in 2024, Lavrov praised Trump for making what he called an honest admission that NATO lied when promising non-enlargement of NATO to the east. Lavrov said it was important that this root cause is now sending stronger in the West after years of Russia making that claim. But Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow would need to look at Trump's concrete steps once he is in the White House. Lavrov also said that Moscow was willing to clinch a wider security deal for Eurasia that would also provide security guarantees to Kyiv, or, as he described it, a country that is called Ukraine. Lavrov accused the United States of seeking to disable the Turk Stream gas pipeline through which Russian gas flows to Turkey and Europe. He said he was convinced that Washington doesn't need any competitor in any area, starting with energy, and therefore it was encouraging Kyiv to disable the Turkish Stream after the Nord Streams. The comments come after Russian Defense Ministry said Moscow had downed 9 Ukrainian drones that tried to attack part of infrastructure of the Turk Stream gas pipeline, describing the attack as an act of energy terrorism. Lavrov also spoke of Moscow's ties with Tehran, saying that the Strategic Partnership Treaty expected to be signed later this week between the two countries will not be aimed against any other country. Russia's top diplomat also urged all countries to comply with the UN Charter in full and warned against speaking certain points of it as positions on the menu according to tastes. Lavrov also said that the Security Council should be reformed, insisting that the countries that have a special responsibility in the global economy, world finance, world politics, military layouts are not all represented in the UN Security Council. The minister named in particular China, India and Brazil as those that should be represented. Commenting on the situation in Syria, Lavrov said Russia was not leaving the Middle East and noted that the Russian embassy remains open in Damascus and there are daily contacts with the new authorities of the country. Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow for E! News.
Syria turned a new page after Bashar al-Assad's fall after 13 years of civil war. As the country hopes for peace, Turkey pledged to support stability, while France's backing of the Syrian Democratic Forces caused tensions.
For years, Syria endured the devastating effects of a prolonged civil war, torn apart by competing forces and the ambitions of external powers seeking to impose their agendas. The conflict has caused a devastating humanitarian crisis with profound and far-reaching consequences. It led to the displacement of millions of people, extensive loss of life, and widespread destruction across the country. On December 8, 2024, armed rebels took the Syrian city of Damascus, forcing longtime ruler President Bashar al-Assad to flee the country. Following the collapse of the Assad regime, a genuine hope for peace emerged. Bordering Turkey demonstrated a long-standing commitment to stabilizing Syria and supporting its recovery, especially given the complex political, humanitarian, and security challenges in the region. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan vowed to uphold Syria's territorial integrity as he reaffirmed a new era has begun, both in the country and in the region. He emphasized Turkey's support for Syria in its efforts to prevent destabilization, cautioning that Ankara would act swiftly against any perceived threats. Earlier this week, French President Emmanuel Macron stated that Paris would not abandon the Syrian Democratic Forces, which has been one of the many factions involved in Syria's 13-year-long civil war. Turkey has strongly rejected the proposal to deploy French troops along the Syrian border.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan despised actually the French requests without telling its name, and he mentioned them as a small European countries who follow the US, but not without mentioning their name. The thing is, of course, now Syria is a perfect place for those countries who want to have an influence over them. And as a country which has a history, a colonial history in Syria, France wouldn't want to miss such an opportunity, especially considering US disengagement.
While publicly claiming to avoid direct military involvement, France has been deeply embedded in Syria for years, particularly in Kurdish-controlled areas in the northeast. Through its support for the Syrian Democratic Forces, France has been backing a group tied to the PKK.
It's important to recognize that France's statements with regard to sending troops to Syria are more rhetoric than they are fact. France already has troops in Syria. France has already been separating the ethnocentric separatists in Syria. It's important to understand that the SDF is a fiction actually created by the United States, supported by France, but it's actually controlled by YPG, PKK terrorists. Just as Armenia and others had created a fiction of Artsakhians, there's a fiction of this Kurdish group that is really nothing but a terrorist group.
The presence of France in Syria was clearly felt throughout the years of the war. A French cement company, Lafarge, was admitted to making millions of dollars of payments that supported ISIS and another terrorist organization as part of an effort to maintain its operation in Syria as the civil war escalated. Lafarge and its subsidiary Lafarge Cement Syria conspired to encourage ISIS to act in ways that will benefit their security and economic interests, according to court documents. The companies paid around $5.92 million to terrorist groups through intermediaries. After Lafarge evacuated its cement plant in 2014, ISIS seized control and sold the cement for about $3.2 million, as reported by the Justice Department.
We know that France at one time colonized Syria. And when France did that, it didn't do so with good intentions of rebuilding Syria or giving Syrians freedom. In fact, what they did is they brought mercenaries from Sierra Leone to actually kill Syrians and civilize Syrians. The fact is that France has always had bad intentions in Syria, and it continues with those bad intentions to keep Syria divided so that there is a weak Middle East, so that it can have its own control, just as it has in Africa and throughout the Middle East and elsewhere.
Experts agree that France may try to use its influence in Armenia to advance its interest in Syria, where a large Armenian community lives. The country also has local branches of traditional Armenian parties, such as Dashnak Tutun and Hun Chakan, also operate in the country. For many years, Yerevan actively supported the regime of Bashar al-Assad. It's enough to recall how back in 2009, during the visit of the Syrian president to Armenia, Catholicos of all Armenian, Karagin II, presented him with the highest award of the Armenian Church, the Cross of Saint.
We know that Armenia is very malleable or manipulated by France. And we know that Armenia backed Assad. And we know that France preferred to keep Assad so that it could have a weak Syria. So there's certainly every reason to believe that France will continue to use Armenia as a tool to undermine Syria. Because although France publicly held a position that it wanted to bring democracy to Syria, it actually acted very much the contrary.
Turkey, as a neighboring country of Syria, has been involved in the civil war since the beginning due to its long border, security concerns, and a large number of refugees. Ankara has emerged as a winner in Syria, but now using its influence to help build peace. The experts predict that in the end, Paris will not send its troops to Syria, realizing that this will lead to a new escalation and direct confrontation between France and Turkey, and even the United States of America.
I don't think such a thing can happen without U.S. approval. The thing is, can U.S. approve such a request? Yes, they can, because as long as it's not U.S. military, Trump wouldn't mind much about who is there. But if it is going to create a new tension, as considering both parties are NATO allies, and considering like U.S. new administration is not favoring France either.
Official sources have reported that the Syrian ministers of Foreign Affairs and Defense, as well as the head of intelligence, are said to make an official visit to Ankara. This visit marks the beginning of a new chapter in the relations between Turkey and Syria, which could become a significant step toward the long-awaited peace. It's clear that France has one goal: fragmenting Syria. Despite the ongoing attempts by external actors to interfere in Syria's internal affairs, the focus is now on the potential to achieve stability and security in the region through dialogue and cooperation between neighboring countries.
Protests grow in Georgia over journalist Zia Amoglobeli's arrest as media joins a nationwide strike. Leila Rahimli reports more from Georgia.
Hello, I'm reporting Georgia, where an important political and social developments are unfolding. Currently, a protest is underway outside the public broadcaster building in Tbilisi. Demonstrators are demanding live broadcast coverage and calling for the immediate release of Zia Amoglobeli, the director of Batumelebe and Net Gazeti, who has been placed under 2 months of pre-trial detention by Batumi City Court. Meanwhile, in Batumi, journalists have gathered near the Ajara TV station to urge the station to provide airtime to cover Zia Amoglobeli's case. Media representatives argue that the public broadcaster in Ajara has not given enough attention to her arrest, sparking widespread concern. Batumi City Court has sentenced 6 individuals to detention following protests on 12 January. In a shadow of solidarity, more than 40 independent media outlets in Georgia have announced a 3-hour strike today, starting at 3 p.m. This is a historic move as Georgia attempts its first ever nationwide strike. Businesses, universities, schools and media outlets are also joining the strike, demanding the release of those arrested during the protests and calling for new elections. The Speaker of the Georgian Parliament, Shalva Papashvili, commented on Mizia Amoglobeli's arrest, accusing Georgian media funded by foreign sources of engaging in political activism rather than journalism. At the same time, the European Union has expressed its support for Georgia's civil society and independent media. European Commissioner Mart Kos announced that the EU has already allocated 8.5 million euro for these efforts and is prepared to provide an additional 7 million for communication activities. In response to international criticism, including the European People's Party's resolution calling for sanctions against Georgian Dream leaders, the Parliament Speaker Shalva Papashvili states the European People's Party continues its anti-Georgian campaign. Their resolution is an unprecedented attack on Georgia's sovereignty and democracy. We will not bow to their pressure and remain commitment to protecting the country's interests. Internationally, the situation has drawn significant attention. The European People's Party's resolution not only calls for sanctions but also urges the international community not to recognize the Georgian Dream regime as the legitimate government of Georgia. In short, Georgia is a critical juncture. Protest strikes and increasing international pressure are causing the government to wonder how to respond. The coming days could be critical in shaping the country's political future. And that's the latest updates for now. I am Leyla Rahimli, reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Meanwhile, about 40 farmers have been killed by suspected insurgents in Nigeria's northern state of Borno. Officials say the gunmen also took some locals away. The Sam Akande reports.
The farmers, according to a statement by the state government, strayed off the security corridor established by security agencies to an area prone to attacks by terrorists. Borno State is the epicenter of an insurgency in Nigeria, which the United Nations says has led to the death of over 35,000 people and displacement of over 2 million. Several of those who are displaced are now taking refuge in camps. In August last year, about 16 people were killed in the state by suspected insurgents. In 2023, 15 rice farmers were killed and several others were abducted in the state. Locals say the insurgents usually launch attacks on communities using motorcycles, shooting sporadically and instilling fear in them. Authorities in the state have visited communities where the insurgents attacked to commiserate with families of the victims. They urge the locals against movement in locations identified to be unsafe. The state governor has also directed security agencies to ensure those who have been abducted are rescued and the suspected insurgents arrested and dealt with. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has also repeatedly directed his security and intelligence heads to do all they can to defeat all forms of criminality in the country. Defense authorities in the country said the terrorists are getting local and foreign support and have called on the United Nations to assist in tracking them. They have promised to improve on the local manufacture of weapons in the country and ensure they eliminate the insurgents and other forms of security threats to the country. Tassim Akande for A News in Jos.
In business news, electric car sales rose by 25% globally last year, surging in China but slowing in Europe, that is according to figures published by the British consultancy Remotion. A record 17.1 million battery electric vehicles were sold globally last year. China led with 11 million sales and 40% increase from 2023. In Europe, sales fell 3% to 3 million, with hybrids gaining market share. The US and Canada saw a 9% rise, surging at 1.8 million vehicles. Remotion highlighted that government policies significantly impact sales as EVs remain more expensive. BP warned investors weaker fourth quarter results could be on the way. The energy major sees lower oil and gas production, refining margins and trading.
BP said the drop in refining margins and impact of turnaround and maintenance activity could lead to an up to $300 million drop in profit quarter on quarter. The news sent BP shares down almost 3% on Tuesday. BP delayed its much-anticipated investor day due to a medical procedure for CEO Murray Auchincloss. The British firm said he will be back in the office in February after undergoing a planned procedure and is recovering well. The Capital Markets Day was due to take place on February 11th in New York, but will now be later in the month in London. Auchincloss has struggled to steady the company while facing investor concerns over strategy. He is expected to unveil his strategy for the company at the Capital Markets event. The firm has sharply slowed investments in renewables and low-carbon energy since he replaced previous boss Bernard Looney. Auchincloss has focused instead on higher return oil and gas projects since taking office in January last year. BP will still publish its fourth quarter and full year results as planned on February 11th.
Farghani Space, a subsidiary defense giant Baykar, successfully launched its first satellite, Fijian-100D1, as part of SpaceX's Transporter 12 mission, the firm announced on Tuesday. The Turkish Space Agency confirms that SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket launched the FGN-100D1 satellite into space from Vandenberg Space Force Base in Diyarbakir. This marks Turkey's entry into the small geostationary satellite category. The Farghani Space Agency said the satellite will provide global communication and geopositioning coverage, helping the pioneer future technologies.
In quick succession, starting with MECO, then State.
That's all for now, but don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to A News for more exclusive updates. We'll be back soon.